So many things we can't control, so many hurts that happen every day, so many heartaches that pierce the soul, so much pain that will never go away. How do we make it better? How do we make it through? What can we do when there's nothing we can do? We can be kind, we can take care of each other, we can remember that deep down inside we all need the same thing, and maybe we'll find, if we are there for each other, that together we'll weather whatever tomorrow may bring. Nobody really wants to fight. Nobody really wants to go to war. Everyone wants to make things right. What are we always fighting for? Does nobody want to see it? Does nobody understand? The power to heal is right here in our hands. We can be kind, we can take care of each other, we can remember that deep down inside we all need the same thing, and maybe we'll find, if we are there for each other, that together we'll weather whatever tomorrow may bring. And it's not enough to talk about it, not enough to sing a song. We must walk the walk about it. You and I, do or die, we got to try to get along. We can be kind, we can take care of each other, we can remember that deep down inside we all need the same thing, and maybe we'll find, if we are there for each other, that together we'll weather whatever tomorrow may bring. And maybe we'll find true peace of mind, if we always remember we can be
Reverend Eileen Brownell is a friend of mine. She's a police chaplain in Chico, California. Last Sunday, she said, "My dad's tap shoes, my parents' wedding rings, my old army uniform and medals. These are a few of the items mentioned to me as they explained all of the things that they lost in the campfire. What would you miss? What things do you value most if you lost everything? I thought about that as I was putting up my Christmas tree, and I was looking at each one of the ornaments, and each one brought to my heart a memory. I have this little carousel horse that I painted for my grandfather when I was 12 or 13, and I gave it to him, and he passed away that year. And my grandma passed away a couple years ago, so I inherited back my gift. I have these beautiful silver Christmas ornaments from my aunt and uncle who live in New Mexico, which is my hometown, bringing me back to the smell of green chili in the winter time and all of the wonderful feeling of that time period. Reverend Eileen had to do death notifications. She did searches for recovery of bodies along with the policemen. She had hugs for search and rescue teams. She did prayers for firefighters. She said that she's seen more grief and loss in the past couple of weeks than her past 12 years as a police chaplain. She had to figure out how to tell an 8, 12, and 17-year-old that their father and grandmother had passed away. She also was with the people who were doing DNA tests to make sure they could identify if somebody was a family member. And she was with a young lady. And she asked the lady, "Are you sure your father's missing?" And she said, "Oh yeah. We both got in the car and we were about to drive away, but he ran back into the house to save the dogs. And I looked back at him, and when he got in there, the roof caved in on top." And she said, "I screamed and I screamed and I screamed at the window, but it didn't make him come out." And she got to the point where she realized she had to drive away, and by that point, the tires on the car had melted. And so she got out of the car and she ran for her life. And she made it, but her dad did not. And so she knew that he wasn't there anymore. This time of year in our season of light is often a time of grief. It's often a time of sadness. And while I have this joyfulness inside of me of rekindling that experience of love and light inside my heart and soul, I also understand there are several people who are in the space of grief, who are in the space of sadness, of missing their loved ones. A couple nights ago, I got a call from my mother early in the morning, and it was one of those calls, "Are you okay, Mom?" And she said, "I'm okay. But your friend, your childhood friend who I grew up with, her ex-husband had been killed in a car accident, and her young children were in critical care in the hospital." Life is precious. And I know that while I'm here in the season of light, we have Hanukkah and Kwanzaa and Christmas and solstice, that it's the time of the year when it is the most dark. It is the time of the year when the light is the least. But it's also the time of the year to remember that it's always darkest before the dawn. It's always that sadness that comes before the new awakening, the new beginning. And sometimes it's hard to quantify or understand when something tragic happens, when something devastating happens. And I know for myself, every time there's a loss of something, then I get the opportunity to recreate myself. Because I don't know who I am anymore. I don't know who I am. But I have to have the courage to stand in a new possibility, to become a new idea of myself. I always want to be evolving into that next higher version of myself. And I think about courage. I think about that word. The root of it is cor, C-O-R. It's Latin, and it means heart. I saw David White on Friday night. Who was there? Wow. Wow. Yeah, I'd never seen him before. I had no idea. Yeah, he's amazing. And he has this idea of courage. He said, courage is a word that tempts us to think outwardly. It tempts us to think outwardly, to run bravely against opposing fire, to do something under besieging circumstances, and perhaps, above all, to be seen and do it in public. To show courage, to be celebrated in a story, to be given medals, given the accolade. But a look at its linguistic origins is to look in a more interior direction. And towards its original template, the Old Norman French, courage is a measure of our heartfelt participation with life, with another, with community. A work, a future. To be courageous is not necessarily to go anywhere or do anything, except to make conscious those things we already feel deeply. And then to live through the unending vulnerabilities of those consequences. The unending vulnerabilities of those consequences. In order to be courageous, I have to be vulnerable. I have to be willing to have an open heart. In order to be courageous, I have to be willing to step into an area I've never been before, to discover a new idea of myself that I've never encountered before. Because we're all recreating ourselves every moment. Every moment is a new recreation. Every moment. I'm reading our book of the month, which is by Pema Chodron, Comfortable with Uncertainty. The very first page, it got to me. And I was thinking about it because I often think about whenever I think about being enlightened, and oftentimes we think about being on the mountaintop and being in the place of the Most High. And I connect with that. I love that idea. But she said something that really jarred me into a realization. She said, spiritual awakening is frequently described as a journey to the top of a mountain. We leave our attachment and our worldliness behind us, and we slowly make our way to the top. At the peak, we've transcended all pain. The only problem with this metaphor is that we leave all others behind. The suffering continues, unrelieved by our own personal escape. Yeah. On the journey of the warrior bodhisattva, the path goes down, not up, as if a mountain pointed towards the earth instead of the sky. Instead of transcending all suffering of all creatures, We move towards turbulence and doubt however we can. We explore the reality of unpredictability and insecurity and pain. And we try not to push it away. If it takes a year, if it takes lifetimes, we let it be as it is, at our own pace, without speed or aggression. We move down and down and down. And with us moves millions of others. Our companions awakening from fear. At the bottom, we discover water, the healing water of the bodhicitta. Bodhicitta is our heart, our wounded, softened heart, right down there in the thick of things. We discover the love that will not die. This love is bodhicitta. It is gentle and warm. It is clear and sharp. It is opened and spacious. The awakened heart of bodhicitta is the basic goodness of beings. I want to be a bodhisattva warrior. I want to awaken in my life. I want to inspire all people to awaken to their life. But the Bodhisattva warrior is how the individual works with their own life. Bodhicitta is a Sanskrit word that means noble or awakened heart. Just as butter is inherent in milk and oil is inherent in the sesame seed or the poppy seed, within us is that noble, awakened heart within each and every one of us. And I've been really thinking about that because I'm stirred about what's going on. I'm really moved. I'm upset about the racism that's happening in our country. I'm upset because I thought very, very naively, I thought the racism of the 60s and the 70s was something that I learned about in history class, not something that was heavily prevalent today. This morning I woke up and saw an article that there was a bar fight at a Linwood bar because there was a black DJ spinning and a whole bunch of white supremacists went into the bar and they started a fight. Now that's right here. That's right in our own community. And I'm really upset about the fact that I'm waking up to my own privilege and I'm waking up to ways that this society is an oppressive society. But I didn't really know it because I haven't really been oppressed by it, except as a woman, maybe as a lesbian. But where do I go with that? Where do I go with that information? I realized that as I was born into this country, there is what we call a race belief. It's a country belief. Each person is born into a different country, and their country has belief systems and cultures. My family has belief systems and cultures. This community has belief systems and cultures, and our belief systems influence the outcome in our lives. And I can unconsciously be taken away or unconsciously be part of some type of system and not even know that I'm part of the problem. Not even know that I can be also part of the solution. But it doesn't reside out there, it resides in me. It resides in me taking my own heart on and being willing to be in the midst of it all, in and through the pain, in and through the uncomfortableness. Be willing to see that. I think about a wound, sometimes there's a wound festering, like if I fell and something got infected and it's festering inside of me. It has to be opened and cleaned before it can heal. I think about that happening right now at a society level, that right now there's been something underneath it all that has been festering, and it's coming to the surface because it's time for us to heal this. It's done. And we're the ones here to be a part of the healing. We're the ones to be a part of that new idea of possibility. To be a part of freedom, to be a part of liberation for all people. But it takes me being willing to look at it. Oh, that wound isn't there. I'm going to pretend like it's not there. Anybody not go to the doctor and you knew something was wrong? But here we are, and there's something wrong. There's something wrong out there, but that's just an effect. Because we have the opportunity to right now be a new creator of new possibility. In Living the Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes said, if the philosophy of Christianity were lived, wars would cease, unhappiness would cease, economic problems would be solved, poverty would be wiped from the face of the earth, and man's inhumanity to man would be transmuted into a spirit of mutual helpfulness. Alice Walker said the most common way people give up their power is by thinking they don't have any. Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. said, in the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Nelson Mandela said, as long as poverty, injustice, and gross inequality persist in our world, none of us can truly rest. And I think about what it means to have fearlessness and courage. How does courage create connection in a community? How do we become a heart-centered, vulnerable, willing community that's willing to see what's going on? For those of you who are in Prac 2 and our practitioners know this, that if there is something going on in my unconscious belief system, it has to be pointed out. I have to call it forth. I have to speak it in order for it to be healed. I can't just ignore it if it's there, but once I realize that unconscious belief system or that way of being that's within me, once I realize that it's there and I've spoken it, that's when the healing can happen. When I'm willing to be authentic and real, when I'm willing to actually say, wow, that's there. Now we can say, okay, where do we want to go from here? What do we really want? But you have to see it. You have to be willing to point it out in order to shine the light of truth. Because the light of truth is what dissolves it. Truth with a capital T. That's the truth of the infinite. The truth of the infinite is that we're here to be a space where God shows up. And I choose to be a space where God shows up as love, as freedom. But if I'm participating in something unconsciously, I need to be aware of it. If I'm participating in a program or a system of oppression, I have to be aware. I got to wake up to who I am and how I'm participating in order to know that I haven't been the space of freedom, but I now can be. Pope Francis, on September 7th, 2018, said, God needs the Christians to be his hands and feet on earth and to speak about injustice wherever it happens, especially when hidden by silence, the Pope said in an interview. He said, the Lord promises rest and liberation to all the oppressed in the world, but he needs us to make his promise effective. He needs our eyes to see the needs of our brothers and sisters. He needs our hands to help. He needs our voice to denounce the injustices committed in silence, sometimes complicit of many. Above all, he continued, the Lord needs our heart to manifest God's merciful love for the least, the rejected, the abandoned, and the marginalized. I think about that, and I think about how many days do I have left on this planet? How am I going to be a person of impact in the world? I went out to dinner last night, and I went to Jabena Ethiopian restaurant. And there's a lady there named Martha. And Martha was the owner, but it's now owned by her family. She started the restaurant. And she told me that she was my server. She said, oh yeah, I just want you to know that I had brain cancer. But the beautiful thing is that they gave me 5 months to live, and that was 6 years ago. And she goes table to table, treating each person like they're her family. She's got the brightest smile, a contagious essence, and a beautiful, transcendent way of being where I feel like I'm seen and heard by her. And she chooses every day, not knowing if she's going to be alive the next day, to be in the space of love. She's serving me. And yet she has who knows how many days. By the way, she asked if you would all pray for her. I told her I was a minister. I'm like, hey, I'll keep you in my prayers. We'll just have our whole community. She's like, oh, I know that God provides miracles every day. Yeah. She truly knows that there is something bigger that's here, and it's a part of us, and that we all can tap into that. And she knows the power of that is in community. I can't do this alone. Now, some of you in the room may be lonely. Some of you in the room may be super sad and suffering because of the circumstances that are around you. But I encourage you to reach out. I encourage you to ask for help, to connect with other people. And for those of you in the room who aren't in that space, also reach out to everybody else too. I can't ignore the fact that there is suffering going on. But I can be a space of love for those around me. Reverend Eileen said that she was noticing in the city of Chico, so the city next to her, which is Paradise, the entire city is obliterated. The fire affected 57,000 residents. And so her city has a whole new group of people. People who've opened their houses, their homes, places to be, so that those people who've lost could stay with them. And she's noticing people complaining about the traffic, and people upset that the lines at the grocery store are extra long. And I just wonder, in these times of challenge and the times of difficult, who do you choose to be? How do you choose to show up? How can we together be a courageous community? Be willing to be in the midst of the pain, not ignore it, but not let it overcome either. Because if I'm willing to be heart-centered, heart-open, and vulnerable with you, then I know that I am willing to be a new possibility for each and every person. I don't have to fix what's going on. I don't have to change what's going on. The only person I'm responsible for is me. But who I am in relationship to each and every person around me, That is on me. That is who I want to be. That is who I choose to be. So who do you want to be in this? How can you be fearless? How can you be courageous? As David White said, courage is the measure of our heartfelt participation with life, with another, with a community. It is a work. It is a future. To be courageous is not necessarily to go anywhere or do anything, except to make conscious those things we already feel deeply. And then to live through the unending vulnerabilities of those consequences. So I invite you to think about that this holiday season, this season of light. Who do you choose to be? Let's pray. Oh. I know that there is one life. It is Brahman, Atman, Christ, Jesus, Buddha, Jehovah, Pachamama, Isis. There are many names. It shows up in many ways. But I recognize and know that it is the space of infinite possibility, infinite potentiality, and that I am a co-creator in this place. It is the nature and essence of freedom. And so I declare liberation for myself, and I declare liberation for each and every person in this room, each and every person who's watching online, that we are here in a space of awakening our hearts and our souls, so that we may be the spiritual warriors willing to go down into the depths and find the heart of who we really are. I'm not afraid of what is showing up, because I know love is right in the center of it. And so I tap in, tune in, and align myself with that love. I align myself with that revelation, with that inspiration, knowing that this is a love-evolution that is happening within me and is happening on the planet right now. And so as I surrender into that possibility, I know that I don't have to figure it out. I don't have to know what the end result is. I just get to be in it. And that's where the juiciness, where the connection, that's where the unlimited possibility is. That's where freedom is. So I release myself from fear. I release myself from uncertainty, and I delve in the pool and the possibility of freedom. And I claim this truth for everybody here. I claim it for our city, our country, our planet. And I know that I am a part of it right here and right now. And that the loving kindness that exudes from me as a result of this truth is God expressing in and through and as me. And I see it everywhere I go from this moment forward. And I'm so grateful. And so it is.